Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Teresa Kofsky. I serve as your town administrator. This evening we have a lot to go over. It's a tough situation. I would say we're at the pivot point financially. And I'm going to be giving you a lot of information through a PowerPoint presentation tonight. Following the presentation, we're going to have question and answers. And so I would just ask that during the presentation that you hold off on the questions until we get to that point. I want to cap this meeting tonight at about 2 hours, if at all possible. So we'll have Beth here watching the clock, and we hope to hear from as many of you as possible. So let's begin. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll go over all of that. The presentation, we're going to go over Proposition 2.5 and the overrides that are being proposed. We're going to describe what Proposition 2.5 is, what the overrides cover and don't cover, the two different options, one-time revenues that cannot be used, estimated tax impact of the overrides proposed, and what the overrides include and do not include. In addition to that, we'll be talking about level service budgets and reduced budgets, and we'll share those details with you. The level service budgets will go into effect for the town government on both overrides. In an understandable way, and there's nothing easy about municipal finance. I've included this, and I should mention, as Cammie had tried to say, that this presentation will be available on the town's website, along with a whole host of other information and videos pertaining to Prop 2.5 and to these particular ballot questions. This is a statewide challenge. This is an excerpt from a report titled A Perfect Storm, and this was put out in October 2025 by the Massachusetts Municipal Association. I urge all of you to take a look at that because it really breaks it down in a really nice, succinct way and an easy to understand way. And what it really, really demonstrates is that West Brookfield is not alone in this. This isn't just a West Brookfield issue. This is all across the state, especially for the smaller rural communities. What is Proposition 2.5? Simply, it is a law, a Massachusetts law, that controls how much money that cities and towns can raise from property taxes. There's two main points. That is a 2.5% annual increase and a 2.5 cap. So that's the total levy that cannot exceed 2.5% of all taxable property. Definitions: a levy, the tax levy, is the amount of property taxes to be raised. Levy ceiling is the 2.5% of the full value of the town. New growth revenue is property tax derived from new construction. So let's say you put up a garage, you put a deck on in addition to your home, that falls under new growth. The levy limit is the maximum allowed levy. To exceed that levy requires an override, a Proposition 2.5 override. This is the West Brookfield tax levy history, and I want to just point out to you some important factors just on this chart that I want you to remember as we go forward in this presentation. This is going to mean something here. This is fiscal 21 or year 21 through 26. Those are your tax rates. In 2021, you were at 1403. Today, you're at 1075. This next column is called the prior year levy limit. So how the levy is calculated for each year is the 2.5 that we just talked about, that increase, over your prior year levy limit. So if you just look at across the board here, 2026, prior levy, Prop 2.5, that's the amount that you can raise over, combined with new growth. So when we look at that number, together that's only about $230,000. In a budget like the town's budget, that's really small dollars, but I really want you, it's important that you keep thinking about the 2.5, because as we go forward, you're going to see why the math is not working, why it's not sustainable. All right. Sorry, here, I talk with my hands, so it's, hold on. What is an override? Again, put simply, it's when the town needs to collect more money than Proposition 2.5 normally allows. So the town identifies a funding gap or something that needs to be funded that's going to end up over the levy. They're asking your permission, the voters, to vote to override Prop 2.5. It's really that simple. What's being proposed? There's 2 override questions on the ballot that you'll be voting on May 5th. Question 1A is for the amount of $1.6 million for ongoing town government at level services, no additional services, no additional staff, no additional programs, no additional purchases. Level services, the services you get today, that's it. And it provides Quabog Regional School District with their level services budget. And if you had attended the school committee meeting, you would see that that would have been option number 1. The next ballot question, 1B, is for the amount of $1.1 million, again, ongoing town government services, and proposes the Quabog Regional School District's reduced budget. That was option number 3 that they gave in their presentation. Why now? Why do we need an override now? Well, there's several factors. Actually, there's quite a few factors. The most obvious is that you have a structural gap in your budget. Basically, the rising costs are rising faster and higher than what you're taking in for revenue. So the simple math there is, here's your expenses, here's your revenues, there's a gap. What are the drivers? There's some major drivers: labor, benefits, energy, infrastructure, unfunded mandates, education and transportation, and decreased unrestricted general government aid. And for those of you that don't know what that is funding provided through the state that is primarily for schools. And there are some municipal for state, for land and that type of thing, but the majority of it is for the schools. Why would that matter so much to the town? Because the more funding that they get, the lower our assessment is, right? Because they have more to work with. So then they come back to the town with, this is what we need. Well, over time, that amount continued to be reduced. And what I find really shocking is that this is state, that right now, currently in fiscal 2026, that funding is at a level back to 2008. That's 18 years ago. I don't know if any of you remember the Great Recession, but right at the cusp of that. But they don't include inflation. So picture what that means. You go to buy a new car. That would be like me walking into, I want a new car. But I want to pay, and I'm only going to pay what it would have cost me 18 years ago. It's not going to happen, right? I'm not going to find that brand new vehicle for that. Why? Because of inflation. So, there are many, many things that we are not in control of when it comes to the finances. All right, I'm playing around with this, I'm sorry. There we go. One-time revenues. So I think that most of you have probably heard the phrase free cash. And I don't know, I think some folks think, hey, it's free cash, let's spend it. Right? Yeah, no. The town has been using free cash to plug the gap in your budget for years. And it's substantial. And let me explain that. Free cash comes from a limited place. So it comes from, as you and I were talking about it earlier, it comes from departments watching their budgets, staying within their budgets, and not overspending and being able to turn some money back to the general fund. That's one. The free cash is a one-time revenue. That's what it is considered, a one-time revenue. You shouldn't be using one-time revenues for reoccurring expenses. What that would be like would be you're a homeowner, you have your budget for your living expenses, and then you have a savings account. That savings account is set up, let's say, as an emergency fund. So if your boiler goes, or you need a new roof, or maybe you're saving for vacation, whatever it may be, separate fund. You are not paying your living expenses, your reoccurring expenses. You're not using that savings account for that. But if you did, what would happen? Well, you're not going on that vacation. You're going to dip into that and dip into that if you can't meet your living expenses. And why might you not be able to meet those expenses? Let's say you got a 2.5% raise, but it doesn't meet inflation. It doesn't meet how rapidly the other expenses are rising. I just want you to think about that. That's how free cash should be treated. A one-time. It should be used for one-time expenses, projects, capital, one-time purchases. Let's dive into that a little bit more. This is just an idea of the one-time revenues that have been used from 2021 to 2026. Oops. Oh, sorry. There we go. We've got it pretty high. It's well over 300,000. Again, 300,000. It dipped a little bit. So something happened in fiscal 23. I don't have the answer for you there. But what a relief that must have been. I believe that year it was around 259,000 that you supplemented the budget with. And then you can see it goes up and up and up. And last year, you spent over $400,000 in free cash. And there was another one-time revenue that was used from the overlay of $48,000. It's a pretty large number to supplement your budget with. This here
just shows you, it's just a chart that shows you the fiscal years and how much each year. But what I find staggering is this total amount over really a short period of time when you think about it. That total amount is over $2 million. That's $2 million you don't have anymore. It is gone. It's been used. And it's been used to fund a budget. It's been used as a Band-Aid to get you through the next year, and the next year, and the next year. But let's think about, had that not been used, what that $2 million could go for today. That $2 million could cover, well, if the school stays open and we have to go through with that project for the windows and doors, it is estimated that our share of that is going to be around $1 million. Well, there's $1 million there, leaves us $1 million left. What else could be done? Well, we have a public library, gorgeous, that needs to be repointed. We received a quote on that, $700,000. And why does that need to be done? Because water's getting inside. It's going through the mortar. And it's a specialized way to do it. You've done your patchwork here and there over the years. It's a specialized mortar. It's expensive. The patchwork that had been done is failing because it wasn't correct. But you were hurting for money, so you did it on a dime. $700,000 for that project. And just not too long ago, you voted $280,000 to borrow to pay for the town hall roof and structural repairs. That's 3 major projects that this money could have paid for. So I just want you to be aware of that. This is the stuff, and now we can't afford those projects. Don't know where we're going to get the money. So and those aren't the only capital needs. There's equipment with highway that needs to be purchased. It's old equipment, needs to be replaced. Every year that goes by and you're not replacing it, what does that mean? More repairs, or the chance that that old truck breaks down and it's not serviceable. So it just kind of, this to me was very, very important to share with you. All right, moving on. I decided to do a couple of slides just to give you an idea. Now this, remember when I said to you, I want you to remember the 2.5, right? And I want you to remember that 2026, that equated to about the 2.5 plus new growth to about $230,000. So I only took 2 areas to show you. I could give you a host of them, but I'm not going to keep you here all night. So I'm going to give you 2 examples, but I want you to be thinking again, 2.5, 2.5. These are uncontrollable costs. These are the health insurance, dental insurance, group life insurance, liability, Medicare, unemployment, and Worcester County retirement. I only did 2 years, but the percentage increases are huge. And again, keep in mind that 2.5%. So in 2025, we spent just under $1 million for all of those. 2026, it increased by 19.27%. That's a pretty big increase. That brought us to almost 1.2 million. The quotes that we've received for fiscal 27 brings us to almost 1.3 million, and that increases 7.34. Over 2 years, in the course of 2 years, those costs have gone up 26.61%. Again, let's think about that. 2.5, that's what you're allowed to take, raise in taxes. That's it. That's the money you've got. But here's just a small group of expenses that have gone up in total over 2-year time period, 26%. Right? It doesn't add up. This is another one. This is Quabog Regional School budget. And this is the assessments without the transportation. And if I were to include the transportation, that increases every year as well. Right? It's expensive. But just want to give you an idea. Again, fiscal years. This is the minimum education requirement right here. That is dictated to us. It's mandated by the state, Department of Elementary, Secondary Education. This year, so you can see in fiscal 2022, right around 185, 2024, 188. Then there was a little dip in fiscal 25, and then it's rebounded up again. 2026, it was an increase of over 261,000, and then another increase for fiscal 27 they've issued for over $300,000. That's an increase over last year's requirement. So keep in mind, that number that I gave you, the 230,000, we're already over that. We're well over that. These are the percentage increases from the state each year. This coming year for fiscal 27, that increase is 7.71%. Then we look at the approved operating budget for the school system that you have voted on each year and what that increase looks like. And so over the minimum operating budget, or increase from the minimum to the approved, has been an increase last year, fiscal 26, of $570,175. That's a lot of money. If you take and you combine these two sets of increases, this is what you're looking at for increases. Why? Because it costs. And I want you to think about this. I want you to think about the schools and the town. And right now, we are both in the process, our budget process, right? We share so many of the same issues. So when people are asking, well, why is the town budget so big? Why does it cost so much to operate a school? I'm just showing you the numbers we don't control, and just a few of them. Now imagine the school's budget alone, all of their staff, the insurance, all of that, the electricity, the utilities, all of it. And so they are in a position where they're struggling. And what happens is that when those state funds continue to be chipped away at and they're not getting that revenue, in order to operate, they've got to go back to the towns and say, this is what we need. It's really, that's it. So this is just an idea between the two slides, and like I said, it doesn't include every other uncontrollable expenditure that affects the town, but already you can see where that gap is coming from. This is just a quick chart to show you over the years how much DESE has increased. This slide here just simply shows you where your tax dollars go. And I know I've heard people ask that question, like, what am I paying taxes for? What's it go for? Well, it goes for a lot. Goes for a lot. This orange section here is almost 52%. That's the schools. That includes Quabog, but it also includes the vocational schools as well. Then you have this red slice. That one there is your insurance and retirement. That's at almost 12% of the budget. And then the blue is public safety. The large green one there is general government. Then that purple slice, which is just over 8.5%, that is highway department. And then you've got your much smaller slices, but just as important. Your senior center, you've got library, recreation, and all of the other things. You've got debt service and other government. So it just gives you a visual of this is where your money's going. And it's a lot. It's a lot of services. And a lot of services that are hinging on not being able to provide those services, not as you get them today. All right, now we're going to go into the tax rate, and we're going to go into, you know, the impact of the overrides, and this is where it gets personal for you. It took a radius of area towns just to see where we land, where West Brookfield lands in terms of the tax rate. And West Brookfield came up the lowest out of these towns. And again, this was a radius around West Brookfield. If you averaged all the other towns, you come up with a tax rate of about $13.66. West Brookfield's tax rate today is $10.75. This is the first ballot question for 1.6 million, and what it shows you is that your current tax rate is $10.75. The proposed tax rate impact per thousand is an additional $2.26. The bottom line is it's estimated that it will be $13.01 for a tax rate. What this slide shows you, and I apologize if you can't see it, but what this shows you is, according to the Division of Local Services, the average single-family home property in West Brookfield is about $413,594. That's its assessed value. Currently, that tax bill is $4,446. Now, the impact for a $1.6 million override will be an additional $934.72 to that tax bill. I've got some other numbers here. We'll also have this on our website. There'll be a link where you can go and check what yours would look like. But here, just briefly, let's say your property's worth $250,000. That means your current bill is $2,687.50. The annual impact to that bill would be $565, which would mean that the estimated tax bill will be $3,252.50. The second question on the ballot is for 1.1 million. Again, current tax rate, 1075. Proposed tax rate impact per thousand is $1.56. The proposed new tax rate estimated is $12.31 per thousand. using the same average single-family assessed value of $413,594, the estimated impact at the $12.31 rate will be $645.21. Again, if you have a property that's $250,000 assessed value, the impact to that tax bill will be $390. What the override, the $1.6 million override, what that does and does not do. It maintains the current town services that you receive today. It provides Quabog Regional School District with the additional $952,525 over the fiscal 2026 approved school budget, and that allows them to operate at level services. The financial projections at the current rate shows that the town will need additional overrides for years to come, because this is not a one-time fix. That this fix is next year, fiscal 2027. It does not promise to keep the West Brookfield Elementary School open. It does not include the town's share of an estimated $1 million for the elementary school doors and windows project. And it does not reflect the district member town of Warren's ability or desire to contribute the amount of $1.2 million towards the level service budget of Quabog Regional School District. And they have said they can't afford it. And what does the 1.1 million override do and doesn't do? Well, again, it maintains the current town services, programs, and current staffing levels, provides Quabog Regional School District with the additional funding of $349,507 over the fiscal 2027 required minimum contribution that is mandated by the state. Provides reduced funding to meet option 3 as described in the Quabog Regional School District budget presentation that does detail the closure of the West Brookfield Elementary School. This provides no additional purchases, services, or programs at all. And what happens if neither override passes? Without an override, the town will implement a reduced budget so that we can present a legal, balanced budget as required at town meeting. And what does that look like? That's pretty significant. It's basically gutting the town services. This is just a short list, just kind of touching the surface of it. So all departments will be affected. There won't be any department that is not affected. You can expect reduced services. Some programs will be completely cut, some will be paused. Lowered staffing levels, which means lowered operation hours. Delayed maintenance and repairs, longer response time or processing times for service, reduced investments in technology and equipment, increased wait times on permits, inspections, approvals, licenses, all of that, limited capacity for long-term planning, reduced ability to meet the rising costs of utilities, fuel, contractual obligations, so on and so forth, and cuts to training and professional development and support resources. Now that I've given you so much that I feel is just really, it's tough. It's tough to hear, and it's not happy news. But I thought as I start bringing this to a close, I wanted to share with you that the folks that work for you, we've been discussing this, and we've been looking and looking and looking at what we can do internally. And I do want to say, I want you to know that none of us are giving up. And I also want you to know that you're very fortunate, because the financial team that you have is an absolute necessity to try to right this ship. And by the grace of God, you have a strong financial team. And I just want to show you this real quick. When I say strong financial team, municipal finance is not like balancing your checkbooks, your household budget. It's not like operating a business and balancing that budget and inventory. No. This book here is what is required of your financial team. It's almost 1,000 pages long. It's not something you learn overnight. It takes years and years and years of discipline, of study, and getting their certifications. I have to tell you that that is the one thing that you have going for you, is a strong financial team. And I have worked in communities where they didn't have a strong financial team. And I don't know if you've ever heard of receivership, but boy, in one community we came pretty darn close. Why? Because there's a constant turnover. Those positions are hard to get experienced folks to fill. So I just want to say that that's a big positive you've got going for you. I also want to share with you some of the short-term and long-term things that we are looking at and that we'll be working on for you. This isn't going to, a lot of these things aren't going to happen overnight, but it's a start. We've got to start moving in that direction. And then I'm going to give you something. I'm going to give you something to do that's going to help out. Right now, we have a budget freeze in effect. Something tells me that we're going to continue with that budget freeze, and we will be establishing a purchasing approval process for larger purchases, and that'll be for every department. We will increase our purchase power by working with intergovernment or intermunicipal purchasing, co-ops. The bigger our buying power is, the cheaper the products will be. We'll be continuously looking to separate the wants from the needs. And I'll tell you that it sounds pretty easy, but boy, you can get some really compelling reasons why somebody needs this, a department needs this. But we really have to be clear. Want, need. We will be investigating and pursuing, where we can, regionalization and shared services with other area communities. We've got to take a look at that. And it would be twofold. It would help the other communities as well as ours to save some money and yet still provide the services. We'll be looking at financial policies to establish those policies and follow those policies. And it's within financial policies that create the guardrails. So somebody starts spinning, they're going to hit the guardrail, but they're not going to go beyond. So that's a really important thing that we need to do. Establish and implement an economic development plan. We are starting to work on that, We did receive a grant to update our master plan with a focus on economic development, and that process will be starting soon, and we're going to be calling on you folks to come on in and let us know what you see for your town, because we've got to find that balance. And your input, you live here. You need to give that input. Become part of the SEDS planning. That's a strategic plan for community and economic development that partners with area communities and the Chamber of Commerce to work towards, we know West Brookfield is not a town that wants big box, right? We're not going there. But you have so many other, you have talents, you have resources, you could do the farms, you could do so many things. There's so many home businesses that really could be brought forward. There's a lot of talent that can be brought forward, which, you know what, every dollar spent in West Brookfield stays in West Brookfield. We'll be looking at short-term rentals for a local excise tax option. We'll be establishing a process of approval for additional staffing, programs, operations. Those are going to have to be requested. No more of a department thinking, you know what, I think I need this, so I'm going to do it. Nope, we're going to have a process for that. We're going to continue to seek grants, but in doing so, we will be establishing a process that requires review and approval prior to the application being submitted. Grant funding is wonderful, and that's another thing you've got going for you. Your departments are all about it. They are all about getting grants, and as many as possible. The one caveat, the one thing that we have to be careful about, especially right now, is when it comes to a match. So we want to be able to review those before a department head just goes ahead and submits, gets the award, and then we find out, special town meeting, we're going to need some cash to supplement, our contribution to the grant. So, and in some cases, maybe it makes sense in that moment. But we want to go through the process to make sure, so we're not all blindsided by that. And then we have to finalize solar payment in lieu of taxes, which is called a pilot. It's an agreement. You have one currently that RRG has found. David Mancello has been working with the assessors and found one of the pilots really isn't up to par. And so we'll be renegotiating that. There's another pilot that we are just starting to work on with the company, and so that'll help, but again, it doesn't fix the problem. All right, so we have concluded. I just want to mention that we have another forum, will be April 13th at 6:30 at the Senior Center. That one's going to focus on the departments. So the departments will be coming forward to let you know what those services are going to look like should the override, should an override not pass. So you'll understand that and see how that affects you. And then we'll have a final one, April 27th. That'll be here, and that'll wrap up everything. And we will also use a portion of time to answer the questions that folks may have. So before we go into question and answers, I want to say that I want to hear from as many of you as possible that have questions. So let's be brief with the questions so we can hear from as many voices as possible. Be respectful. We'll try to avoid personal attacks. And then the most important thing is that we want to hear your questions. So if you leave here tonight and you have a question, please email it to bos@wbrookfield.com. And we're gonna do our best to monitor those every day and then get those answers. And then we're going to post them on the website. And you're gonna find all of this information, including this presentation. You're gonna find that on the town administrator's page on our website. So don't hesitate but to send those questions over, because the most important thing is that we provide you with as much information as possible to assist you in making the decision that you're going to be asked to make on May 5th. Thank you so much. We're going to turn this over to questions.
Hi, do you want people to introduce themselves?
Yeah, that would be great. Nice to see you again.
You too, good to see you. My name is Taylor Rochemel. I have a couple questions. Hello.
Oh yeah, that's
All right, not that close. I'm so sorry. Wish I wasn't on camera. Anyways, so one of my questions I was going to ask if you could just help me understand the difference between 1B, and 1A and 1B. I was having a hard time understanding. In my notes, I wrote 1.6 mil for 1A with some notes, and then for 1B, I wrote 1.1 mil with some notes, which originally I thought that, well, if you could just help me understand that, that's my first question.
Sure. So 1A is the 1.6 million, and that covers the level services of town services. So it's a level service budget for the town, and it also provides the funding for the level services budget that's been proposed by Quabog Regional School District.
And 1B?
And 1B, again, level services for the town, and the reduced budget, which was option number 3 that was presented by Quabog.
Do you mean at that original meeting at the school?
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that 1B is not option 1, not option 2, but goes right to option 3, which means that would be all in the Quabog? Like combined?
Option 2 is close the school.
Closing the school.
Option 3 is close the school.
Well, option 1 was like not close the school, option, right? Option 2 is close the school, and option 3 was sold also, right?
Steve, you want to take this one?
I'm
Thank
just
you.
trying to understand, because personally I have hope for our town, and I have hope for our school in saving both of those things. I'm very hopeful, and I'm also very hopeful that Prop 2.5 is going to pass, and I hope and pray that it'll increase from there on so that we can meet everyone's needs. But I'm not sure, I don't think I understand how to vote for what I want, because I was under the impression that 1B would give us additional money for the school, but then it didn't sound like that in your just now, so I'm just quite confused.
Yes, please.
All right. My name is Steve Duff. I'm the superintendent of schools for Quabog Regional School District. To answer your question, yes, we looked at every version of the budget. We looked at potentially having a K through 3 in West Brookfield and a 4 through 6 or more. The issue with that is there's huge transportation costs. You get reimbursed for transportation at 85%, but our number for transportation for FY27 is already in. Our transportation budget would double because we would have to add a third tier because we can't start with the second option. Outside of the second option, the third option, given the current financial situation, just being able to make the minimum required contribution, to cut $2.65 million out of the school budget is impossible to do with staffing. We've reduced 30 staff over the last 10 years, plus a little bit more. So the only option that's a viable option to get to that number would be to close an elementary school. Yep, that would be the third option. The second option wouldn't be doable because of the transportation costs. It would actually cost more than a level service budget.
think what she wants to hear is that option
So if you're asking if option one absolutely keeps West Brookfield Elementary School open, is that what your question is?
I'm not even sure I understand what it's on. That is part of my question, yes, but I'm also just trying to further understand, when it comes to voting, what is in, selfishly, like the school's best interest is where I'm at, but also the town as well. Like what is, I thought in my head at the last meeting that I would be for, maybe voting yes on both, and now I'm just confused on, like,
Yeah, no, it's understandable because it is confusing. So for the $1.6 million, that would go to fund what the school committee approved for their budget the other night, which is a level service budget, which means the same level of services next year that we have this year. We have been working, and I just want to be very clear with everybody in the community, we've been working as a school district to try to find additional ways to bring in additional funding. We looked at regionalizing the North Brookfield, we looked at a tuition agreement, we've done tons of energy efficiency pieces to offset the local assessments. The problem with it is, as you know, and I've been at every town meeting in West Brookfield and Warren for the last 15 years, we continue to use free cash in order to operate one-time costs, and that is a bad formula. That's why we're here today. With the $1.6 million override, when Teresa talked about spending $2 million in free cash over the last 5 years, the amount that Warren would have to give to the school district above minimum contribution in 1 year is actually $1.6 million. So if you look at spending $2 million over 5 years, we would be asking for $1.6 million from Warren to match West Brookfield's number. We have been working with the finance committee and Warren as well, and with the select board, and they have indicated that they cannot back into $1.6 million, and that's where we come up with the issue. So when Teresa did a great job of explaining it, if you pass the $1.6 million in an override, that doesn't guarantee that West Brookfield Elementary School can stay open, because Warren can't necessarily back into that same number, which would be required to keep both schools open. So we looked at the other versions, K through 3 and 4 through 6. When you add another tier of transportation, it's over $1.4 million that has to come from both towns. That we can't do that. Our goal is to partner, and we've been working with the advisory board in West Brookfield and the select board and with Teresa and with Jim Ferreira and the advisory board. Thank you, Ray, the finance committee, not the advisory board, and select board at Warren. Our budgets haven't been questioned over the last few years because we've worked transparently with the towns, which I think is important. But we have to recognize where West Brookfield is at, and we've worked very diligently to put versions of a budget together that is about the sustainability of the district, not necessarily about keeping something open just for 1 year. We have to look at the long-term factors of what's going on, which is different. You know, we started a Chapter 74 program, which brings in additional funding. We have school choice, which brings in additional funding. We're trying to find ways to offset our local assessments, because at the end of the day, I'm a resident in one of our towns. I pay taxes. Education is huge. The hard part is education is a business as well. If you continuously are losing money, at some point your business isn't going to be successful. And it's our goal to provide that services for our
I know I'm not supposed to double question up here, but I did preface with the fact that I had 2 questions. So I would like to ask my second question, please. It shouldn't require much, but I did write down for you that I wrote, what ideas are you looking for us to, for economical development? What was that?
So those ideas, we'll get to those. We're going to have forums and all of that. So we haven't started working on those, but we'll be looking at like the Route 9 corridor and different ideas to bolster economic development in West Brookfield. But you just reminded me, I did say that I had some homework for you guys, right? Something that you could do that'll make a difference. Now, will it make a difference for this coming year? I don't know. But there's a lot being put on the legislators. And we really need you to reach out to them, reach out to Congress, reach out to your senators, your representatives, and let them know that what's going on in your town, and they need to step it up. Now, I'll put on the website too some more information from MMA and from STAM. And MMA is Massachusetts Municipal Association. They're really, really great organization who really works hard with the legal and financial and all of that, and pushes and pushes and pushes on behalf of cities and towns. And there's a smaller one that's called STAM, and it's Small Town Administrators in Massachusetts, and they're doing the same thing. So what we've done is we've joined on the bandwagon and have signed the petitions and all of that with other communities to the senators, representatives, to Congress, to the governor's office. But you can all do the same thing. The more voices they hear from, the more pressure they're going to get, and we really need them to step it up. To give funding at a level 18 years ago without considering inflation is just bizarre. Bizarre. What are they thinking? So a big portion of the problem that we're faced with, and a contributing factor to the gap that we have, is because of the lack of funding. And so that's homework. That's something that you all can do, every single one of you.
Hello, I'm Lindsay Yeager. I have two questions, but they're snowballing each other. So you can only vote for one of like either A, B, 1A, 1B, or none.
No. If you wanted to, you could vote for two. You could, if you wanted to say yes to both, you could. What ends up happening is that, let's say there was a tie, let's say it was a split, then it's the higher amount will prevail. That language also, that explanation will be on the ballot as well. But yeah, you could vote 2 yeses, 2 noes. Okay?
The other one was is like 1 and 2 separate. So if like 12 people vote for 1A, 10 people vote for 1B, and then 10 people vote for 2, which one would win?
We'd have to, yeah, don't ask me that. We'd have to take a look at that. You've already lost me.
Yeah, I didn't know if they were broken up by 1A, 1 and 2, where if combined more people vote for an override, whether it's A or B, compared to no, if the override would prevail, then you have to look at the separate components.
I mean, if you vote for both, you're canceling each vote out, basically.
No, you're not.
No, they're still tallied. It's tallied. And if it is a split, then it's the higher amount prevails.
You can vote for both, yes for both questions.
Right.
If they both pass, we're not adding those dollar amounts together. It's the one with the higher number of votes is what passes. So if you really care about the schools, vote B.
Stand up, we can hear you talk.
If you can vote for both.
Microphone.
You can vote yes or no on both questions. If 1A and 1B both pass, then the one with the higher number of votes is what will end up being what we go with. If the 1.1 has more votes than 1B, then the 1.6, that's what we'll do. They won't cancel each other out, but we could end up, unfortunately, splitting the vote if people don't realize that you can vote for both. Did that answer your question?
Hi, my name is Daisy. I think there are some families that might want to contribute more than the 2.5% tax increase. I don't know of the legality of this, but is there a way to set up some sort of account where people can contribute towards? even if it doesn't save the school, at least try to build up the savings account again.
I really don't think that that is feasible. But thank you. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. Hi, I'm Madeline. Louder? No? Just touch it. Hi. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, okay. So watching the slides, it appeared on one of them like the tax value, or not value, the number that we were taxed, the tax rate.
Yep.
That decreased over by $4 per 1,000. On one of the slides, it looked like it was back in maybe like 2022 maybe, or 21. It looked like the
Yeah.
tax rate was 14 something per 1,000, and then it's now down to $10 per 1,000. Is that accurate?
Hold on. Whoop.
That one.
No, no.
No, not that one. Sorry. That one.
This one here.
So in 21, it was $14. Am I reading that right? That our taxes
Yes, you are.
substantially decreased.
Yes.
Which is probably also a big part of how we got here. Is that?
You know what I'm gonna do? So we have David, who works for the assessors. He basically works as principal assessor for the town. We have him on Teams, so I'm going to give him this question.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
All right, very good. So basically the answer is no. So the tax rate is just simple math. It's whatever the operating budget is that's voted at town meeting divided by the total town value. That's your tax rate. With everyone knows values going up as they have over the last 10 years. That's the primary reason that the tax rate has come down. So if we hit a market slump like we did back in, what was it, 2015, 16 era, when you see a higher tax rate, it just means our tax rate is going to go up.
Would there not be a benefit to just increasing the tax rate then? It seems like our budget isn't significant, like it doesn't cover.
Well, essentially, that's what you're doing by doing an override, is that you're going to allow the town to borrow or request more money from its taxpayers, which in essence will increase the budget, the levy, and your tax rate.
But not permanently.
Permanently, yes. An override is a permanent adjustment to the levy.
It is a permanent.
Yes.
But not the full 2.5%, right?
Free checkbook for them.
So that 2.5 is going to be that 2.5, so if the override went through, right, it raises the tax rate. But then the following year, now your levy has been raised, and you would still could apply the 2.5. It doesn't negate the 2.5.
I was just wondering what, if the school closes down, what would happen to like our tax rates in our town and the expenses of things then? Like if it were to permanently close down, I feel like the trajectory of things, like I see people leaving or just kind of our community kind of losing its value in a lot of ways. So is that something that you guys have projected to happen as well? Curiously.
So, just to let you know, we just found out about this not too long ago. So, within the last, 2 weeks, that there's a possibility of the school closing. So, there has not been an in-depth study or anything like that as to how it will affect West Brookfield, whether people will not want to move in, whether people will move out, if it'll lower your values. We don't know that. But what we do know is that there are several communities throughout Massachusetts that have had to do so. And as a matter of fact, in the neighboring school district, Quabbin Regional School District, 2 towns out of the 5 have had to close their elementary schools for the same reason. Declining enrollment, the revenues aren't what they need to be, and the expenses are too high.
Looking at those towns, what happened?
Right, and that just happened in the last couple of years. So I don't have that information for you, so I can't really answer that question in honesty. I don't have it.
Do you know what happened to like those other towns that lost their schools though?
No, if I did, I would let you know. So what I do know is that those students are transported to another school, and
Like numbers or taxing? You don't
no,
have any of that?
no. I don't really have a question.
I would just like to get
Hi
a
there.
clarification. Mr. Duff, if we pass the $1.6 million override, we can fund the school. Mr. Duff said something that Warren won't be able to meet their 1.6 over minimum. So we're still gonna close the school?
In order to keep both schools open, it would be in the neighborhood of 2.65 million. I can tell you that Warren has reported, Warren's above minimum contribution is greater than West Brookfield's above minimum contribution. West Brookfield's required contribution is greater than Warren's contribution. But Warren, for the above minimum contribution, pays 60% of that above minimum contribution. Warren has reported that they cannot afford $1.6 million above minimum contribution. I'm not sure what number Warren is going to put into their budget when they do their budget book, but based upon what number Warren can afford would determine what can happen with the schools. They do. Well, no, they don't vote. So the school budget, or Warren will put in their budget book, they'll put a number for above minimum contribution. I can tell you the towns have been very generous to us over the last 4 or 5 years, or for a very long period of time. But Warren only has a certain amount of money that they can put forward, just like West Brookfield only has a certain amount of money that they can put forward. We do have Mr. Capaco here, who is on the advisory board for the town of Warren.
Hi, Ray Capaco. As Mr. Duff said, I'm on the finance committee for Warren. In anticipation of tonight's meeting, I did pull from our town accountant. I'm sorry. I pulled from our town accountant the latest numbers here. The most that Warren, we have our levy limit is, we could do up to 1.48 million if we emptied our bank, which we won't, of course. And so and I don't mean this to imply anything to you as a town. I'm just telling you where we're at. But we can't do 1.6. We literally can't do 1.6 without doing a proper override ourselves. And we're not in a position to do that. So that's just a fact that for everyone to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
So my question has to do with if West Brookfield Elementary School were to close, we would theoretically have the same number of students requiring hopefully the same quality education. So how much are we anticipating to save by closing this building, considering that it is owned by the town and will need maintenance? I hope we've run those numbers. I hope not, because we have the same amount of students. Well, we already don't have air conditioning, so we can't cut much there. It seemed like the largest, what I saw, inflation was related to insurance, retirement, staffing costs. And so are we really thinking that we can save all this money cutting staffing further?
So we estimate the cost of this building at $227,000 in that ballpark for the building maintenance itself. I know that Teresa can probably talk about what might be or might not be included in the overrides, but the cost itself is $227,000. Will there be a reduction in staff? There will absolutely be a reduction in staff. I can tell you that our current contract says that you can't have more than 30 kids in a classroom at an elementary building. Would I ever even want to be close to 30? Absolutely not. What I do want to point out is that I was principal at Warren Community Elementary School back in 2013, and I had over 500 kids in Warren Community Elementary School. Projected between our two elementary schools next year, we're at 500 kids between the two schools. So we have an enrollment, a declining enrollment issue. It's not because kids are necessarily leaving the district. Families just aren't having as many kids as they used to have. So right now we have about 250 students, 260 students in West Brookfield Elementary School. 60 of those are school choice kids, which means that we have about 200 kids from West Brookfield and West Brookfield. In terms of staffing, if I have, I'm just going to use rough numbers, if I have 31 students in West Brookfield in a grade level, 31 students in Warren in a grade level, that requires 2 teachers at each building, which is 4 teachers. If I combine those two, we would have 62 kids in a grade level. With 3 teachers, the class size would be 21 to 1. So the reduction of staff comes when you bring smaller class sizes together, you reduce staff. There's also the potential, if we've talked about this.
You're really only saving like 6 or 7 teachers though.
Well, there's additional staff that go along with that, and there's additional positions that go along with that. Yeah. You know, to be honest, I'm going to be very candid with you. The first year cost, when we look at the above minimum contribution, because West Brookfield would still have to give more, the majority of that first year's cost is unemployment, which is a one-time cost, which is difficult. We would guess that many people who didn't get renewed or had to be rifted or let go, hopefully they would get jobs. That's why obviously that would be what we want for our teachers and for the other staff that we let go. But those savings are significant.
So what is that?
So the difference between a level funded budget and closing the school.
The difference between a level fund or level service budget and closing a school
Is about $1.6 million.
is $1.6 million. Savings and expenses. With that,
No, so they would, between both towns, they would meet the requirement, between both towns, they would meet the
First, because then the building is included, so that decreases the assessments. Okay, but the town still has to pay.
The town would then be responsible to take care
Right,
of the
so
building.
that's still your tax dollars. That's the 237,000 versus the
Yeah.
1.6 Correct. With higher class sizes and overall less resources, from what I'm hearing. And how do you get West Brookfield votes to do that, right? If Warren doesn't go through with it, we're gonna still close the school down. Even in our tax will still go up. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
No,
Well, I mean, I haven't lived here for that long, but I can say that. Well, sure, but we have not been matching our inflation for years.
We're gonna vote to increase, because West Brookfield historically does, but it doesn't mean it's gonna save the school. So our taxes will go up, Warren's gonna have.
I just wanted a better understanding of how much would be saved, because I don't think it's really that significant. And it turns out
It's pensions and healthcare and salaries, it's a lot.
you still need staff, though, you still the same amount of students.
Healthcare, we all are healthcare. Maybe two microphones, maybe like.
Hi, my name's Jordan. I'm from town. I have a couple of questions also. Mr. Duff, so say Warren gets us, votes in 1.1 million. That's gonna basically get us where we need to be to keep the school open, right? If we get the 1.6.
It leaves us like $200,000 short.
What do we need?
Yep, so the above minimum contribution that the town would both need to come up with would be $2.5 million. Divided by 60% from Warren and 40% from West Brookfield. So
Oh, yeah.
that's
You want to mention? Or you can mention. Or I can.
Now, good for
And the other
me.
thing is people who
Please give her the microphone.
Who would make the final decision to keep the school open?
I can answer that. The school committee would make the final decision whether the budgetary amount that we're getting from both towns is enough to keep the school, or to keep both elementary schools open. That's a school committee decision. The school committee voted a budget based upon the override number that was presented by West Brookfield. That's why they voted the level service.
Now, say, we vote the 1.6 out here and the school gets shut down. Are we putting all that money towards the library? What are we doing?
I can't answer that. I mean, I can, but
This one. I'm Tammy Lamick, I'm one of the select board members. So, can you hear me now? So I'm Tammy Lamick, I'm one of the select board members. So allowing the ballot to go through allows us to tax up to that amount of money. If the school committee then decided not to go with that option and not close the school, that would not mean the town has to tax the $1.6 million to get our tax bills up that high, because there's no balanced budget to pay the school number, because we wouldn't have to.
Thank you.
My name is Jesse Marion, I live at 24 New Braintree Road. If you close the school, what will happen with the building? Number one. Number two, if you close the school, you do your repairs to the town hall, are you going to close the town hall if we have this building that we're already paying for to heat it for winter time, to do all the other stuff that we gotta keep this building going and not turn it back into a school? Are you gonna turn it into municipal offices?
At this point, there's certainly no plans to do so, and we would have to take a look at what our options would be for that property. But at this point, there are no plans to move the municipal offices out of the town hall. And in order to do that, there would have to be retrofit, and that's an expense. And listen, we don't have the money to even deal with the doors and windows at that school. So $1 million if it remains a school, because the funding for that, in part, is through MSBA. And then there's a requirement, if the town did do that, we have to pay that share of $1 million that's estimated at this point, and then you're locked in for a number of years as a school. You couldn't use it for anything else anyway.
One more question. I don't even want to.
Okay.
With the repairs that you're doing with the town hall now, if we decided to not do the repairs to the town hall and put the money towards the school in the school budget.
Okay, and if you don't, so the structural integrity of that town hall has been jeopardized. It's been compromised. So if you do not do those repairs, you already have a wall, an exterior wall that is bowing, and that's the structural integrity. You have rotted stabilization bars, the whole 9 yards, trusses up in that attic that are trying to support that roof. They are rotted. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. That's what that project is, and to replace the roof. Because what's caused the rot? The holes, the fact that the slate had not been properly installed, and so water got underneath it, got through it to the wood. So if we don't do anything with that town hall, it's going to come in on itself. And then what do? That's going to be the center of your town.
Quick question, my name is Jessica. Have the state numbers for the state numbers come in, so do we know, is there a chance that the state numbers could increase so that we wouldn't need quite as much to keep West Brookfield open?
So the only state numbers that we've received are the governor's budget, so we are still waiting for the next phase of that. So there might be an increase, there might not be. We won't know until they're out.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
I'm Elise Call, resident of West Brookfield. I was just curious, has there been any filing for the grant money for the windows and doors?
Yeah, so we did do an MSBA project, just to be completely transparent, at Warren Community Elementary School for windows and doors.
Okay.
That is through the Massachusetts School and Business Association, where they, for this particular project in West Brookfield, they would fund 61% of the project, the town would have to fund 39%. The issue that we run into is that depending upon how long that term is for, so for example, when we're looking at regionalizing, we couldn't regionalize because North Brookfield had an MSBA project on an elementary school. They couldn't close that school because they had the MSBA project on it. The town would have had to pay back that entire amount. So if you go ahead with the doors and windows project at West Brookfield, which, once again, we need to make a decision by April 17th whether we're moving forward on that project, because that's the timeline for the MSBA. If you move forward with that project, you have to make sure that the town is committing to keeping this school open with the increasing costs year after year. Otherwise, the town would be on the hook to pay back that entire other 61% if the school was to close within that time.
Okay, the MSBA, is that the same as the Federal School Violence Protection Program?
No.
Okay, has that been considered? Because I believe there's grant money that can be available through there? I understand it's competitive, but have you had a consultant come out to?
The town has to be the contributing factor to the MSBA, not the grant funder.
Okay, but this program, is this different, or is it the same, the federal school violence prevention program? Also known as SBPP? No?
Just
Okay.
stay with MSBA.
Okay. I might be able to get more information to somebody about that. I don't know if that would go to you or Nikki. Okay. And then I wanted to know, what other ideas are being considered in West Brookfield specifically to keep the school open? Like, what changes are gonna be implemented, efficiencies maybe that have already been completed? Anything, any change to the structure other than the K through 3?
In terms of,
Like any other, like maybe sharing staff a bit more? I know it was
Yeah.
mentioned 2
We-
weeks ago, but.
yeah, we currently do share staff between buildings to keep the cost down as much as possible. We looked at closing Warren Elementary and keeping West Brookfield Elementary School open. I will tell you, I'm a big fan of having 2 schools in each, or a school in each community.
I am too.
The problem that we run into is West Brookfield Elementary School has 22 classrooms. That's if we take the music room, the art room, the before and after school program, which isn't enough to house all of the students in kindergarten through grade 6. We looked at a model of moving 6th grade up to the middle school, but we don't have the capacity at the middle school to put 6th grade up into the middle school. We've looked at every possible scenario. 22 classrooms in West Brookfield, 33 classrooms in Warren. With 33 classrooms, and we have, one of the slides, somebody asked about class sizes. One of our upper grade level class sizes is gonna be close to a 28-to-1 student to teacher ratio at the upper level. If we bring in additional school choice kids, or more kids move into the district, I have the ability to open another classroom, where in West Brookfield, I wouldn't have that ability because there are no more classrooms, including not a music room or an art room. So the space is, the capacity is really what the problem is. And that's, once again, one of my biggest wishes was to keep one building open in each town. But because of the number of students we have and the capacity issue that we have at West Brookfield to house those students is why Warren is the only school that would be able to house all of our elementary kids.
Would there be an option, or has it been considered to like combine principals, combine grades, share special teachers between the 2 schools?
We do, we share,
Okay.
right now there's that, Warren has a .6 art, West Brookfield has a .4 art, Warren has a .6.
Okay.
All of our specials are .6, .4, according to what the population number is, which is a 60-40 split.
Okay, and then what about after-school programs? Is there any charged, any tuition for those?
There is,
Yeah,
yep,
okay.
there is at West Brookfield. At Warren, there is not, because it's a 21st century after-school program. And that's state funded, we're not allowed to charge for that.
For that,
And
okay.
those funds are for those programs only.
What was that?
So those funds are only for those programs.
Okay.
So we can't commingle funds to offset the general operating budget.
Okay. I just want to make sure I
Warren has
hit
the
all my
MSBA,
points
that's
here. And then I guess, like, for me specifically, for my children to be bused to Warren, I don't want them on the bus that long. They're already away from home enough during the day. So what about making it optional for busing? Like, is that optional? Could that happen? So like for me, I'd be transporting my children anyway. I would just prefer to transport them right to West Brookfield Elementary. Is that,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd hate to, I know a lot of families rely on busing, but I just didn't know if that could be.
So the reason that,
been discussed,
the reason that Warren and West Brookfield have regionalized, because when you do a regional school district, you get transportation reimbursement. So even if you transport your children from West Brookfield to Warren, we still legally have to provide transportation
Okay,
even if
yeah,
you're not
I thought
driving.
so, okay.
But it's reimbursable, so if transportation's $1 million and it's an 85% reimbursement rate, on that $1 million, the towns are getting back $850,000. That's how that works. So transportation is actually, that's why regionalization makes a lot of sense because it cuts down on the transportation costs.
Okay.
But transportation was one of the costs that increased the
Yes.
most from last year to this year. So relying on additional transportation does not seem like the most reliable.
So transportation goes up, there's two components in transportation. There is regular transportation, so the yellow bus transportation, but there's also special ed transportation as well. Special ed transportation is what has increased because the number of students that we are sending out of district has increased, and therefore we're required to provide transportation. In the version of splitting the K through 3 through 4 through 6, what's happening is we're now adding another tier of transportation. So instead of one tier dropping the kids off like they do here, and we have another provider that drops them off in Warren, now what would happen in that scenario is that we would have one group dropping off in West Brookfield, say, and then then they would go back around, pick up the kids again, and then drop them off in Warren. And because we're doing that, now your transportation on the elementary side has now increased $500,000. In the first year, we don't get to recognize that reimbursement. We don't see it until FY28. So that's why transportation would go up so much. So you're dropping your above.
Even if we're just closing the school,
Yep.
we then have to transfer all of these students
Yep.
to Warren. So we're relying on more transportation.
We are, but the charges that go up there are much less in either version, quite honestly, in a level service or in.
Could you step up to the microphone so everyone can hear you? Thank you.
We lost $500,000 in funding last year just related to transportation.
Yep.
And I think that we can expect that cost to continue to increase, and here we are, utilizing more of that service. So the cost is gonna go up, the inflation's continuing to go up. I'm just pointing out that we are likely not going to save as much money closing this school because of all of these other variables.
Right, so I understand what you're saying. In that instance, if the school is closed, all of West Brookfield students that we transport now become reimbursable because the reimbursable rate is any student that we transfer over 1.5 miles we get reimbursement for. So every student in West Brookfield would now.
That's still at the 85% though,
Yes.
correct? So increased cost still, just less.
Not as high,
But still increased.
minimal.
It's still increased though,
In the first year, yes, because we would recognize that. But in the next years following, our transportation would go down because our assessment that we're getting back from the state is going up now.
And
Consider that regional that we did K through 3 through 6, and would that be more money to K through 6? They don't consider that.
They do, we would still get reimbursement, but any students that travel over.
I'm sorry, I was just asking about transportation, like, would they consider regional when we did K through 3 through 6? Because we are regional. Like, West Brookfield does end up in one, having 7 through 12th grade. So would that be considered, I'm just going on to your question, would you be able to put that as regional and then give a reimbursement?
yes, you would, but you wouldn't recognize that until FY28. And the issue with that, that's an increase of $1.2 million in transportation because you're adding a whole nother tier. So that one.
You say tiers, buses, like more buses.
Right, so there are two options. You can have two starting times at the elementary building, like at 8:15 and at 9 o'clock. That's the cheapest way. Because right now, and if, just to be clear, if West Brookfield was to close, McCarthy's not increasing the number of routes that go to Warren. It's the same number of buses. There's an increased cost in a day. But in order to do this, we would have to, one of two things. We could start both elementary schools at the same time. I'd have to pay $140,000 per bus to purchase new buses for the bus company, which is astronomical. We wouldn't be able to afford it. The cheaper way to do it is by adding a third tier. And all that a third tier means is we have a high school tier, high school, middle school tier, we have an elementary tier, but we'd have to start the other elementary building at another time because you can't be in two places at one time. So that cost, and we'd have to do an MOU with the union, which we've already discussed all of these things. I don't want you to think we haven't. The issue is that first year cost on top of your above minimum contribution with your 1.1 or 1.6 million, you're also looking at an additional cost of roughly $1.2 million in transportation, which is actually more expensive than keeping both schools open.
Are we able to put the heat on the governors and everything, like with media, and let them know, like let everybody know around this? Because they obviously didn't care when they closed the two Quabbin elementary schools. Was it Oakham? I mean, if what, media, like get out there and say, this is what's happening. This is going to happen to a lot of other small towns as well. It's not just going to be us. And put the heat on for our local governments, and because I mean, they seem to be dishing out lots of money in other programs except education.
I don't disagree with you at all. We have a meeting on April 13th with Representative Brookfield, Senator Durant, Representative Smola. And I want to thank everybody in the community because I got a message from one of the representatives saying, what's going on? I'm getting tons of emails saying, yeah, nice job. So we're pushing forward as much as we can. And I can tell you that their resources to some degree are limited as well. They are looking at the Chapter 70 formula, but that's not going to happen for a couple of years. It's a huge transition to that. So once again, we're trying to do everything that we can to make the most progress that we can to help support our towns. The problem is if you look at affluent communities such as Lexington. Lexington is one of your biggest communities, one of the richest communities in the state, laying off 65 teachers. The funding for education isn't there right now. And there's 57 overrides out of 351 towns. 57 towns are going for overrides.
Like everything else is gone up. Our excise taxes are paid.
You have people back here that can't even hear your conversation. We need a new system because nobody can hear back there. Sorry.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I was thinking if we can get on the news and like let people know, like out there, you know, we have a veteran here. I mean, he's worked his whole life in this town, and get up there. I mean, he doesn't want to see the elementary school closed. Why is the governor not funding our small towns? You know, that we count too. You know, and I'm just thinking, why, you know, get the news stations here. Let's be out there and say, you know, everything else went up. You know, they have the money. They went up on our excise taxes. They get up. I mean, the government's collecting a lot of money on our health care. Everyone's health care. Mine went up $100 a week just last week. So, I mean, everything's going up except things that are important to our communities. And I just think, get the news here. Let's get people angry and just say, you know, come on, Governor Haley, come on, you know, with all these Durant, Governor, you know, get them here at these meetings.
No, thank you. I agree 100%. And I want to echo your sentiment. Nobody wants to see an elementary school closed. That's the last thing that anybody wants to see. When you have the funding that we have right now, it's very difficult choices that the school committee has to make, and it's based upon what's available and what people can actually afford. And if we have X amount of money for education, that's all the money that we have. There's difficult choices that have to be made.
Hi, this will be the last time I come up to this microphone, sorry. But I do also want to echo your echo to her and just say that I support that. I support this cause. I support our town, and I think it's really important to stand up for what you believe in. And I know that we, you know, believe in our children, and hopefully I just want to echo that. I think it's a really good idea to get the media involved and show them how much we care. I think it's good to hear that you're getting people saying, hey, what's going on? I've had probably 100 emails. I'm so glad we have their attention. Let's keep that momentum let's get in front of the cameras and let them know, you know, I don't think anyone in this room, wants to, you know, roll over or give up, and I think that, there's a lot of passion, and it should be, shown, and, it's a good idea.
Save our school. Let's get the kids out there protesting. Let's walk out of class and protest.
Pleasure to work in both towns of New Braintree and West Brookfield as selectmen for several terms. And whatever we can do by out-searching to get things done is great. I made 3 phone calls and found the money to build our senior center. I had learned that the town of Wilbraham had canceled the project, and after talking to a couple people in the governor's office and so forth, they moved the money over to West Brookfield to build that senior center. And it's important that we all do what we can to help each town and give it 100%. I was a selectman in New Braintree for 9 years. I missed 1 meeting because I was sick, and the town hall burned down that night. Thank you.
Can we just make sure we have a good sound system next meeting? Because nobody out back there can hear anyone.
That's a microphone that was for my child's karaoke machine that I brought in.
I just want to say one thing because I love like how much enthusiasm is out there, and we're talking about getting the media involved in all the things. There's a large group of us, specifically like the West Brookfield parents, that are going to be staging standouts on the Commons for the Saturday before each vote. So before the ballot vote and before the town meeting, we'll be out there on the Commons. So we hope you guys all join us out there.
I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and we hope to see you at the next couple of forums. Thank you so much.